from a frequent visitor, Pastor Robert Hutchins from Faith and Family Baptist Church. He'll be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Vice Chair Wisenhunt. Please stand if you are able. Pastor Hutchins, please come forward.
Chairman, I usually don't say anything before praying, but I've had a sinus infection, so when I got the email just a couple of days ago, I thought about asking permission to miss this one, but with all that's going on, I felt like it was so important to come today, and I have such a privilege to pray with y'all. Heavenly Father, Lord, I acknowledge my need before you, and I pray that today we all would come humbly before you in repentance, dear God, and confess that we are part of the problem. Dear God, I've felt for many years that much of the problem in this county lies at the doorsteps of the churches. I feel like we have not done what we should do in spreading your word, acknowledging you, and declaring to this county that you are the answer, that you are our creator. Without you, we have no life. Lord, just this week, just yesterday, my uncle went to be with you and preparing a funeral now. And Lord, life and death is in your hands. And Lord, please let your people be the first to say that we have some real problems in this country, in this state, and in this county. And the answer is you. We have turned our back on you for too long. You have blessed us with a good board of commissioners. I'm thankful for them. Many of these on this board have served for decades. Many of them have fought to keep our taxes low and provide a good education for our children. And Lord, they're to be commended. And I'm thankful for a good sheriff. Lord, I admire our sheriff, and I thank you for him. I do pray for Sheriff Kimbrough today. Lord, we have a new police chief in our city. Lord, these people need you, Lord. There's so much more to it than just the training. Lord, they're under such stress. Lord, these police officers, even our firefighters, and now our paramedics don't know when they respond, they could be going into gunfire. And Lord, every day they leave, they know they may not come back and see their families again. Lord, we need to acknowledge the sacrifice that these people make every day. We need to pray for them. Lord, I thought as the school shooting took place, again, just another one of so many in Nashville, but this time it's just little small children, 9 years old. We think about the custodian that was killed first, the administrator, and even a substitute teacher. And Lord, we have been so blessed here. I, of course, remember the shooting at Mount Tabor. Many, many schools have had guns found on the property. We've been so blessed that we've never had a mass shooting. And then today, as I prepared to leave to run errands to come here, we hear about what's going on at our own county's college, at Forsyth Technical Community College. And God, I pray that, Lord, you would continue to help this county and help this board. Lord, it's time that we humble ourselves before you and see that you've provided for us in the person of your Son what we need. God, I just pray when we say this pledge, we will think about the words under God. We will think that without you, we're nothing. God, we're no better than any other county of the 100 in this state. We're no better than any other county in this nation, but you have been blessed. You've blessed us, and you've spared us from any type of mass shooting. You've spared us from people having to march in the streets because our sheriff deputies or police officers have went against their training. We pray you would keep that shield of protection on this county. We thank you for what you've done for us, but we pray these blessings would continue, and we acknowledge that they are from you today. Bless the business of this board today. Remind these people that while they're elected, they are servants of the residents of this county. And not just these that have been elected, but these staff members. We're all here to serve the people and ultimately to serve you. So we pray for grace today, for we do ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Hutchinson. Citizens who are interested in participating in the public session portion of the meeting today, you can actually do that by telephone. It will be a little while. We have some public hearings today, but that telephone number is 336-422-1200, 336-422-1200. You'll be placed on hold until the public session begins. Those of you that are here for the public hearings, you can sort of put this aside because you'll have an opportunity, but any other members of the audience who are interested in participating in the public session portion of the meeting, they just simply need to fill out a speaker card and return to the clerk. You can actually do that even now and provide that to her for later. We're going to make one brief change, one slight change in our agenda today, simply because we are recognizing the good works of all of the folks that deal with our public safety issues and telecommunications. This is National Public Safety Telecommunications Week. And since we have 5 public hearings that go through those, we thought quite frankly, these folks have emergencies to attend to. We're happy they're able to come over and be acknowledged and us thank them properly. And we're going to do that first before we return to the hearings. I'd like to invite Herb Swaim, the 911 Systems Manager, and other county staff who are here to receive this proclamation. Thank you all very much for coming. And I want to ask Vice Chair Wisenhunt if you read the resolution. If any others, you can actually come on up, which is perfect, because we are going to take a picture at the end. It would be great for all of you to be here. We'll give you 1 or 2 seconds to get here. I think we're good. All righty. Vice Chair Wisenhunt, please.
Thank you. It's such an honor for me to read this resolution, acknowledging what great work you all do. Thank you so much. Resolution recognizing Forsyth County's 911 telecommunicators in emergency services and the Sheriff's Office during National Public Safety Communicators Week. Whereas Forsyth County communicators serve the citizens of Forsyth County, North Carolina by answering requests for law enforcement, fire, and/or emergency medical services. Whereas Forsyth County communicators are a vital link for our Sheriff's Office deputies, firefighters, paramedics, and animal care officers by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them information, and ensuring their safety. Whereas Forsyth County communicators have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients. Therefore, Forsyth County communicators are professionals who work to improve the emergency response capacities of communication through their knowledge and experience, and whereas Forsyth County communicators exhibit professionalism, efficiency, and compassion in the discharge of their duties, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now therefore be it resolved that the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners hereby declare the week of April 9th, 2023 through April 15th, 2023 as National Public Safety Communicators Week in honor of the men and women of Forsyth County, North Carolina, who play a critical role in the protection and preservation of life and property. This is adopted on the 30th day of March, 2023. Thank you.
That's Commissioner Wisen's motion. I'll second it. Could we all support that, please? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you all very much, and we'd have for you to say a word or two, please. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, and I was standing back there listening to that. I just had to say one thing. During the prayer, the preacher referenced the possible shooting this morning at Forsyth Tech, and I was in my office, and I heard active shooter. That's what was said on the floor, and I watched people spring into action on that floor in the 911 center. The phones were ringing off the hook. And I watched the telecommunicators spring into action. I watched some admin personnel that we had there doing something else with a headset on the floor. I saw people coming in the door from off duty coming in. What do y'all need? And I sat there and reflected on that just a little bit. And thankfully, it was not what it ended up being, but I'm just we're very fortunate to have the people that we have.
Thank you, Herb. Herb, our county manager has a little something he'd like to say as a surprise to you, Herb, so
Yeah.
I'll turn it over to him.
If you can stay there, and if I can get Chief Hundley to come up, yeah. We're gonna have to do this, and so sorry about this. So Herb has announced he's retiring, and so I just wanted to take a moment of personal privilege to talk a little bit about Herb's service here, and some things that I can say very clearly that Herb's been involved in, and so we started about the same. I started in October of 2006. And Herb was in that role, at least in our system, as part of that. Done a lot of other things, but you know, during that period, I knew Herb from the 911 side. Herb's also been really active across all positions, chief and everything else at Beeson Crossroads, Beeson's Fire Department, and so he has had a lifetime of service there. In that role with that fire department, and then he's been really active with Fire Chiefs Association, so I kind of knew Herb through all these different places. But what I really wanted to talk a little bit about is how much of a change agent Herb Swain has been in this organization during that period. When Herb took on his role as the 911 system manager, at that point we were on a platform, a CAD platform that was different than the platform that the city of Winston was on, and different than the platform that the sheriff's department was on. And as you can imagine, there was a fair amount of friction about just leaving that platform and joining them. And you know, I personally asked Herb to go learn about what that meant. He went over to Greensboro, but did a lot of work because he had to make a very courageous decision that affected some people that he worked with to try to bring that platform together. But Herb saw that project through. I know that project saved lives, Herb. I absolutely know that did, because we had a separate system, and just the complexity of all those systems having to work together. But he managed to do that. At the same time, we actually, during Herb's work, we moved from the old location, which was out at Station 9, which was the fire station there at the airport. We moved the 911 center into to be co-located next to the sheriff's telecommunications. That was not a popular decision, as you can imagine. Some people wanted to stay out there. You can certainly understand that was going to be a change agent, and Herb took that project through and moved those folks out there. And what we ended up out of that was consolidated law enforcement dispatch and 911 there at the government center in a seismic protected facility, which is important to have happen. That wasn't true over at the airport. And then it gave us a permanent standalone backup system out at the airport that at any point in time we can go out there and do that. That would not have happened without Herb's leadership through that. And then at Beeson's Crossroad, we have always tried to figure out the really complicated thing about how Beeson's is actually in the city limits of Winston-Salem. And so Beeson's Fire Department has, it has been affected by the annexations, and that's, and so their coverage territory is unusual. And, what we saw is that the city of Winston was building fire stations all over the place, and it made no sense to go for use public money, tax citizens who are in areas that were served by Beeson's, who had already built a fire station, to build another fire station. And so the idea that you would co-locate volunteer fire departments, and that sounds really simple, but because of personalities, because of prior investment, because of the way those systems are set up, they are very difficult to do. And after a lot of years, Herb just let me know that that they are breaking ground on a joint effort between Beeson's Fire Station, Beeson's Volunteer Fire Department, and the City of Winston. Kernersville, yeah. All those city limits are right in there. Yeah, and which maybe it's even harder with Kernersville, I don't know, but they are breaking ground on that, and they've been operating a Kernersville truck out of Beeson's now for about a year, which is totally unheard of. And I got to say, Herb, you are amazing. And so we got a gift that Chief Huntley put together. You need something to.
Thank you very much. This is very appropriate, believe me.
What is it?
A lot of people don't know what this day.
Yeah. Herb, we just thank you so much. You're going to be missed. You've done some things that not many people could do. And
Thank you. Thank you. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Herb, why don't you read us the top of that telephone? What's it say on there?
Well, they've got several different items on here, but basically they've got, most of them, though I'm a Carolina fan, I'm hoping that's why that was done.
Yeah. What does the back say?
Don't call, not answering. I will be at the beach a lot.
thank you, Herb.
We appreciate your service, Herb. Thank you very much. All right. The first item on our agenda after our recognition here is a public hearing on zoning petition of EM Light Airs from RS20 to RM8S. And Chris Murphy, the Planning and Zoning Service Director, will give us a brief overview of the request, which we are familiar with, and take it away.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, members of County Commissioners. This is a request of the EM Light Airs for a 15.5 acre tract on the east side of Old Hollow Road across from Old 66 Circle. The request is special use district rezoning from RS20 to RM8S. This is the countywide legacy growth management area map. You see the subject property located in growth management area 4 on the edge of the activity center at the intersection of 158 and NC 66 Old Hollow Road. This is a subject property highlighted in yellow, again just to the east of the commercial activity center within the town of Walkertown along Old Hollow Road. You see it across from the intersection of Old 66 Circle and Old Hollow Road, southeast of Walkertown. This is a subject property outlined in yellow on the countywide aerial imagery. You see that currently the majority of the site is wooded. There is a private access easement that goes up the western or left-hand side of this image to serve those homes to the east of the subject property. This is the subject property shown on the Walkertown Area Plan Update, which was adopted by the commissioners in 2014. It shows low-density residential, single-family, 0 to 8 units per acre. Just a few images around the site. This is looking northwest on Old Hollow Road. The subject property is on the right. You see the Mavis Tire and Battery facility in the background. This is looking north along the existing access easement. The subject property is where this driveway is located. There's an access easement that goes back and serves those homes, but the subject property is the wooded area on the right-hand side of this image. Again, you see some of the development within the activity center there on the left-hand side of the image. This is looking south along Old Hollow Road. The subject property is on the left. This is the site plan. It is 100 townhomes served by a single access point along Old Hollow Road. There is this is just an image of what the townhomes would look like. These next two images are images of the NCDOT highway projects US 158 And then it shows the work that will be done on 66, which is reflected in this image. It's the exact same work. But those two road projects are to the west of the subject property. The subject property is just off this image along Old Hollow Road to the right. We have briefed this several times, and we did have a public hearing that was held back in February that was continued in order to allow the town of Walkertown's consultant to finish a traffic study. But to summarize this project, the proposal does provide an ideal land use transition between the US 158 NC 66 Activity Center and nearby single-family uses. The request will provide additional housing close to goods and services in a somewhat walkable area. The developer is proposing an additional buffer yard, which is a 15-foot Type 2 buffer yard along Old Hollow Road, and the private access easement to lessen the visual impact of the development on the vehicular traffic. The road and right-of-way issues along NC 66 and Old Hollow Road are accommodated. There are some conditions of approval related to the driveway permit they'll have to secure with NCDOT. And as was heard last week, whenever when the county attorney discussed his discussions with the project attorney, that they were willing to increase the length of the turn lanes that NCDOT would require by an additional 15%. So by way of example, if the NCDOT driveway permit dictated a 100-foot storage area for the left and right turn lanes, they would be willing to put in 115 feet. So they would be 15% above the base requirement. We have drafted a revised consent to conditions, and the developer has signed that. That is included in your packet. So they have proffered that condition and have agreed to it. With that, this was heard by the planning board at their December 8th, 2022 public hearing. There were 2 speakers in opposition. The opposition did cite concerns with traffic, inconsistency with the plan, and walkability. Following discussion, the planning board voted 7-1 to recommend approval of the request. The site plan does meet UDO requirements. Again, just as a reminder, we did have a public hearing on this back in February, again, where I believe there were 2 speakers that spoke, and the commissioners did continue this in order to get the outcome of the traffic study. And again, you heard that outcome, and those recommendations were presented to you by the town of Walkertown 2 weeks ago at your briefing. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
I have a comment. I was sitting here, that's one of the best presentations I've heard in a long time. You covered every base. You even reminded me of Abraham Lincoln when you said there was some opposition, but Abraham Lincoln said, and I'm not quoting directly, but you can satisfy some of the people some of the time, a few of the people a few of the time, but you can't satisfy all of the people. In this presentation, I don't see how in the world you can be very critical, if critical at all. You covered all the bases. It's good, really good to hear this.
Thank you, sir.
I have one just quick question. Did you happen to speak with the Walkertown representatives? We got the study, but actually no one was here to speak on about it at all last week. There was no discussion. I mean, when we discussed it, there was none.
Well, right, and again, I believe that's because they had presented it at the earlier briefing. I believe, I don't know, I believe that perhaps the town manager may speak whenever you actually conduct the public hearing. Again, the second public hearing. From the information that was presented in that study, the recommendations, it was to deal with the alignment of the sidewalk and make sure that aligned. Again, I think you heard from the county attorney last week that, again, no matter how that happens, you're going to have to cross a gravel drive, so there's going to be an alignment there. There was a request to realign Old 66 Circle by bringing in that triangular piece of property that's not part of this petition, but that is owned by the EM Light heirs. Of course, it's not part of this petition, so the county attorney determined that that's not reasonable to ask that to be done because it's not part of the petition. And then the third thing was, again, to deal with the turn lanes, and I'm not sure that this goes as far as what perhaps the traffic study said, but again, the petitioner has proffered a revised condition to go 15% above whatever NCDOT.
15%
says is the minimum needed. So, all right. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you. 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 All right. T All righty. We did, in fact, continue this public hearing from February 2nd, 2023, so we are returning to that, and I would like to ask if there's anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition. And if so, please come up and give us your name and address, and we have we had a period of 30 minutes before, and if we need it, we'll use it. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Amanda Hodiern here on behalf of the contract purchaser and would-be developer of this property, and of course, by technicality, also on behalf of the property owners. My addresses are at 804 Green Valley Road, Suite 200 in Greensboro. Thank you for your time this afternoon. I know you've heard a lot about this petition over the course of the last couple months, and I know also you heard a great staff report, so I will be brief, but I'm open to any questions or discussion that you'd like to further explore after my comments. I want to reiterate that I submit to you that this request is highly eminently reasonable in two courses. One, from planning principles and basic sound strategies, as you've heard from your planning director, this does represent an ideal transitional use between the very intense commercial epicenter there at Walkertown, and then as you transition out into the more rural residential patterns that emanates from this epicenter. So I think that this transitional use of a very moderately planned and densely scaled townhome request accomplishes a nice feathering or step-down transition there, as you would look to see in your planning practices. Secondly, it meets your legacy plan. This is what your legacy plan looks to do. By your own policies, this is not a persuasive argument that I'm submitting to you. This is your own policies. When a site like this can provide sewer, you are to look at it as a GMA 3. So that's what this does. That's what this becomes. And under that analysis, this is, again, exactly the type of proposal you would expect to see at this location. So we're pleased to offer that type of appropriateness. Secondly, this is also eminently reasonable because it has well-tailored specifics that properly mitigate and commit to the complexities and uniquities of this site to make it fit better. We have extra dedicated right-of-way for the future Highway 66 corridor that we all know is coming. We have increased buffer yards to preserve that corridor on Highway 66. We have a site-specific plan here that is part of the project. It's reliable. It stays. That plan slides all the development over to the 66 corridor in order to be sensitive and deferential to the residential neighbors to the rear of the property as you look at it from the road. This site plan also has been changed and modified at the request of the neighbors that utilize that easement driveway that you looked at in the presentation, so as to be sensitive and deferential to the way that they approach their homes and properties, so those can coexist well. Finally, it is proper and in keeping with the practices of this board and for Forsyth County to provide sewer and water through those services, even while maintaining county jurisdiction. So that is, of course, the process we're looking to follow, which again puts us right back in keeping, or which is the circular reasoning for the legacy plan continuity. I would submit to you that this plan has been overly and more properly vetted than most that you see, in that it was held to a traffic study that would not normally have been done for this type of project. That traffic study did present 3 recommendations that were asked of the developer, and the developer has legally cannot offer one of them, and it has been deemed not reasonable by your county attorney. The second one with the sidewalks, I believe from the discussion that was had at the last briefing, we're all on the same page. That's a site planning issue, and wherever, between the 2 developments that come in, depending on that timing, however that sidewalk is deemed to be most appropriately aligned, that's what will happen. And that's something that can happen through the skill and the technical review of the planning department. And I think that's already provided for in that process. And lastly, as for the turn lanes, I believe that the developer has appropriately balanced the equities here and offered a solution there where we can be sensitive and acknowledging of the concerns of Walkertown in that traffic study, but also preserve the appropriateness and the reasonableness of the driveway permit process. So we hope that you'll agree. I'm here to answer any questions, and I appreciate your time on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other people, any other speakers in favor of the petition? All righty, hearing none, is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the petition? If you just give us your name and address, and I'll
Yes, Glenn
reset
Eaton.
our timer. We have 15 minutes left.
Okay, I won't need that much. Glenn Eaton at 3591 Old Hollow Road. I've lived there since 2004 of April. That's the property directly behind, the two buildings directly behind there. And again, I'm not against progress. I'm really not. I've spoken to several of you on the board and got some great advice from you. One of the consistent advice that I got was that if we had more people here to say more about the traffic and actually physically see these people, that maybe it would have some type of impact. But I guess I'm confused by that, because when the town of Walkertown stands up before you here, we're looking at 6,000 people, that if you go to them and say, do you want more traffic? Do you want more congestion? Do you really want to have a harder time dodging traffic at that intersection without a traffic light? I'm pretty sure you're going to get an overwhelming no. And so that's the thing. I know that we just let traffic go to DOT, and I realize that. But the bottom line is it is going to be an impact. And I think there were some ways to possibly, diminish or lessen the number of properties that were going to be there to lessen the traffic problem. And I just don't know that that's been addressed. And as far as the sidewalk goes, I mean, number one, that's really not going to diminish the traffic at all. And it's really a sidewalk to nowhere. It's going to go up to that gravel road. If it goes there, it's going to stop. You're not going to push a wheelchair across there. You're not going to push a motorized vehicle across there. It's really, and you don't want people crossing you don't want people crossing that intersection up there. It's just not feasible. So I just hope that some of those things will be looked at as we look at this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the request?
Good afternoon, Chairman and Board. My name is Scott Snow. I'm Town Manager of the Town of Walkertown, and our address is 5177 Main Street in Walkertown. And just to express our appreciation again with the board in working with the town in this case. We had a couple of board members who reached out and talked to myself and some council members. So we appreciate that cooperation, and we appreciate the interest that you get and the attention you've given to this case. That hopefully, whatever the outcome is, we get a good development there that's a benefit to the community. So to address a couple of issues that I saw came up with the briefing that you had last week. The turn lane agreement is a good agreement, I believe, with them agreeing to add some additional extension to what DOT would require. But I think it still needs to be clarified that still is a conditional condition, that they're not necessarily 100% guaranteeing they're going to put any road improvements there. That if, and we've seen that in some cases where the developer amends the site plan to lessen the amount of units. And then when they present it to DOT, that amount of units may not generate enough traffic to warrant putting in traffic lanes. So I think with it being worded the way it is currently, that there is a possibility that depending on how the final site plan is submitted to DOT, that there may not be any turn lanes at all. That's kind of balanced out because less units means less traffic, so they may not require it, but just maybe a little bit of clarification with the developer about if that is a possibility, that depending on what they finally submit, there may not be any turn lanes required. As far as the right-of-way dedication for Old 66 Circle, that's not surprising. We kind of anticipated that, but that's the kind of thing that needs to be done at some point to fix the traffic situation there and the amount of conflict points there along the road. So it's sort of a thing that, since you had the opportunity at least to make the ask and see if that could get resolved with a dedication from the developer, but there's really no dispute since that one didn't get to going on. But there is an issue with the sidewalk. As the developer presented, that they're suggesting that this is a walkable community and has a connectivity to the adjacent property, and that is something that the town of Walkertown wants. We believe that is a beneficial type of development there. However, what's on the site plan does not provide that. As the previous speaker mentioned, that sidewalk terminates into a gravel driveway that is a private easement, which actually may be an encroachment on their easement for that property owner. So that creates issue with accessibility, as the previous speaker mentioned. If you're in a wheelchair or using a walker, or even pushing a baby stroller, going down a gravel driveway to access the sidewalks at the shopping center is going to be difficult. So that's not providing accessibility for anybody who may want to use that sidewalk. And I did contact the developer of the site that's adjacent, the Dr. Batten dentist office, to see what their timeline for their construction of their sidewalks would be. And they're coming to our planning board and our town council next month in April. And they have a very tight timeline to build that development because their office is going to be condemned by DOT for the Old Hollow Road project. So they have basically a timeline to be moved out of their existing building by the end of the year. So all expectations is that building will most likely be built before this particular development will be. So those sidewalks will be built within the right of way, and there will be public sidewalks. So I'm not sure what the developer is suggesting, that they agreed to have that connectivity to those sidewalks, but I believe it needs to be as a condition, or at least shown on the site plan, that they do agree to connect those sidewalks whenever they're built for this particular site plan.
I got a quick question for
Sure.
you. Is there not a little triangular piece of land right to the east of the dentist property that you're referring to that is not a part of the dentist property? Is there actually a little piece of property before you get to the gravel drive?
I think that's right away. That the shopping center and the dentist office goes up to the property line, or at least, well, there's the easement driveway there, the gravel driveway, but I believe the property lines for the shopping center is that they do abut with the actual property of this development. But there is right of way that you may be seeing there that goes across the gravel driveway. So I think it was mentioned also in the briefing last week that it was a concern by the developer, if they built their sidewalk in the right of way and DOT ever comes in and widens it, it would be removed. That would be a possibility, but DOT's policy is if there's a existing sidewalk within the public right of way and they have to remove it, they put a sidewalk back. So that would not be an additional cost to the developer if that sidewalk ever does have to be replaced. That they would only have to install it the first time when they build. But I think what you're pointing to is, or what you're referring to, is that that's actually part of the proposed right-of-way that goes across the gravel driveway access that connects to where the dentist office will be.
Okay, so the dentist's office actually will stub up their sidewalk at to that point?
Yes,
up
to the property
gravel
line,
drive.
yeah.
See what you're saying? I got
So
it.
if they're willing to do that, they will be able to connect the two sidewalks, which would be preferable.
Got it. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other speakers that would wish to speak in opposition to the petition? Seeing none, I declare that the public hearing is closed. Do we have any other questions? And then do we have a motion?
I have some questions.
All right.
I'd narrowed it down to one, Chris, but it's going to be more than that. When you're the top person, you get grilled whether you've done anything wrong or not. You haven't done anything wrong.
Well, apparently I'm Abraham Lincoln, so.
But I'm not going to grill you. It's just to ask questions. Where the entrance access would be, and then with the consultant's ideas about a realignment, and as far as realignment goes, if that were to happen at any time, as far as I know, when it comes to state road, the DOT is the ones that has the authority to go through with something like that. But is this, where this access is, the little corner just directly across the road, I believe it is either was or still is a part of this
whole property, is it?
Are you referring to the gravel private access road?
No, just directly across
you're
66.
You're talking about the triangular piece of property. Well, again, it is owned by the same entity. It's owned by the EM Light Airs, but it's its own parcel, and it's not part of what the petitioner has purchased.
Okay, but that access point there, if there were realignment, and I don't know, I've been through there many times, and I went by there again this morning. Would it align straight across with that little triangle?
Obviously, under an ideal scenario, if either NCDOT owned the triangular piece that the EM Light Airs own, or if that piece were dedicated, or if that piece were part of this request, from a pure transportation planning standpoint, it would be best if Old 66 Circle was realigned to align with the entrance to this project. That's in an ideal world. Of course, as the county attorney discussed last week, and as the project attorney discussed earlier, since that piece of property is not part of the request, the current owners and the prospective owners have not brought that in as part of this petition. There's not any way to require the realignment of that road as part of this project.
Well, I'm just asking questions. I'm not advocating that. Well, to your point, and I talked to you earlier about it, and I thought of it a few days ago, and I don't know why I had not before. When we first started talking about this zoning matter, one of the things that I recall, and after we had talked a little bit, you did, that private easement that goes around there, and there was some conversation, I guess it had taken place between the developer and the owner of that easement. And I would be just like the person that has control or owns that easement. I wouldn't give it up either, and cannot be forced to give up. But to that point, I wonder if there was ever any conversation about if the developer thought that that area up there, and I'm not saying that specific easement that comes right out to the public right-of-way, but right there near it, if the developer thought that was a good place to have access, I wonder if there was ever any conversation that I think that could be, that probably could be done. I just make it as an observation, and then whatever happens, happens. If it was, it's at the top of the hill. And if it could be up there at the top of the hill somewhere, it'd be better than where it's going to be. Even with the, I think you got to have turn lanes either way. And so I just make that observation. But and let's see. I guess that's about it. I could add much more. I believe I will add one thing. This is observation and a comment. And about 20 years ago, or just a little bit more, at that time, officials of Walkertown wanted sewer. And I do not believe there's any officials that's at Walkertown now that was there then. Some of the officials at Walkertown, I think, lived there at that time, but they wanted sewer, and they got a grant. I guess it came from the state. And at least some of those people has passed on. And what happened those 20 years ago, or a little bit more than that, is a cause to allow for more density of whatever, either commercial or either residential. And that's the apartments that's already there and others around Walkertown. That's why they're there, is because sewer. Hadn't been for sewer, couldn't be there. And so that's the case here. Had there not been sewer, a request wouldn't even be asked for, couldn't be done. So that's observation. And one more, I think. I mentioned, and I don't think anybody's paying attention to me, and I doubt if they do today, and it don't make any difference. It'll just be in minutes. As I stated the last meeting about this, and that's not specific to the development. It has to do with traffic on 66. As many know, in particular the people of Walkertown, that 158 is going to be widened from 4-lane city limits, Winston-Salem city limits. It's phase that they're working on now in early stages will go just past Blues Creek Road. And one of the things that's going to occur, it'll be many, but one is in this area from the crossroads at 66 and 158 east to past Blues Creek Road, the traffic pattern is going to change because access to the shopping center's already there. There's going to be medians, and it's going to be right in and right out. Some of the access that they got now to the shopping center, they're going to have some access, but it's not going to be as much. So the pattern is going to change, and when the time comes, then everybody can see where that change is going to occur. And that change is going to occur on 66. The people that's going a certain way now, they're not going to go that way. And that's not the only area either that you're going to have to, and some of you's probably been to places like it where they got these medians and you might have to drive a mile in a direction you don't want to go in, turn around and go back. And that's, but whatever they do about that, I can deal with that. I'll go another way. But that has nothing to do with me. I'm just one vehicle, that's all. And going to be a lot more people impacted. It's not, and all of it's not going to be because of this specific development. That's going to be because of what the state is doing. 158 does need widened, and when the state decides they're going to do something, they're going to do it. The state's, and that is needed. In my opinion, I think the state's got more power in the federal government, with my experience. So thank y'all for the indulgence, and we'll just see what happens in the future.
I do have a question, Chair Martin,
Sure.
to the town manager, Mr. Snow. I just wanted to confirm that the argument that you presented today is in alignment with why the council in Walkertown is not supporting this project.
Well, there's a couple of other issues that we've discussed in the past as well.
Oh, could you share those to remind me?
And it was actually mentioned somewhat in Mr. Murphy's presentation is the Walkertown area plan does not recommend this type of development. It recommends single-family low density. And the town gives a lot of weight to our area plan. That involves a lot of public engagement. We take input from the community to give us input on what type of development they want. And that's what's represented in that plan. So when you have a proposal like this that doesn't fit that plan, extra scrutiny goes into it to say, because the area plan is not 100%, there is some room to change it if you need to, but if you're going to do that, you need to make sure what's being presented is absolutely, validates making that change because the public has been a part of that area plan, and I think it's important to have that as part of your decision process, as well as the traffic issue. I mean, we've talked about that quite a bit, that there is a legitimate traffic problem there on Old Holler Road. And some relief is going to be provided by state projects like the 158 widening and the 66 widening, as well as the I-74 will help out some. But as far as this specific area and between this area and where the DOT project is planned to stop now, there are no plans to make those improvements. The town's working to try to piggyback on that project to get that widening done. But as of today, we don't have a commitment from DOT to provide those recommended improvements on that in this specific road area.
Thank you. And I just want to definitely thank you for coming to represent the town of Walkertown. And I want to thank everyone who came today to share with us the argument for and against this request. I will say that, in due respect to the leadership in Walkertown and the citizens who voted that leadership in, that weighs heavy on me as someone who, definitely I think represents an entity that want to have good, cooperation, collaboration with the different municipalities. So I appreciate, again, the commitment for Walkertown to, I think, do your best to figure out how to support development, but stay true to whatever strategic planning you have for the progress of Walkertown.
Thank you.
Could I just follow up on that?
Sure.
And because I have wondered a little bit because of the close proximity of this subdivision to the town limits. Did you all have any conversation with the developer about asking them if they would be interested in being annexed into Walkertown, and then this becomes sort of a different discussion?
Not this specific development. Over the years, I've got various phone calls from other developers or to say, hey, would the town be considering to annex this in if we build? Most of it was commercial. They were looking to extend kind of the boundaries of the commercial site. Usually my discussion with those folks would be what we just said, that type of development is not consistent with what's in the area plan. So that would either need to be, a change in the area plan or considerable amount of concessions made to help facilitate that, because that's not what is recommended in that plan. So that was kind of the end of those conversations. But we have not been contacted directly from this developer for this type of development to be annexed into the town.
And maybe I'll ask one question of Chris Murphy. As we're in the process of developing new area plans at the moment, moving towards that for a new planning for 2045, correct?
The area plans will follow the next comprehensive plan. We're in the process of doing the next comprehensive plan, Forward 2045, and the area plans will come after that. But yes.
Because as you suggested in the hearing with the planning and zoning hearing, is that you actually, the staff, made a comment that that transitional housing was kind of perfect for this spot, and that doesn't jive with the current area plan. And I just help me sort of understand the juxtaposition of that recommendation to the planning and zoning group.
Well, again, if you notice in the area plan, 0 to 8 units per acre is the same is the base density, whether it be you've got single family 0 to 8 units per acre and you've got low density attached 0 to 8 units per acre. So the density is wholly consistent with the area plan because it's 0 to 8 units per acre. That's what it recommends. It's our contention that over the, again, as we have, if you go back and look at if you go back and look at kind of the history over the last 10 to 15 years, through the recession, there weren't a lot of projects that were getting built. It took down a lot of the inventory of lots and things that we had. We have a housing issue now. There's a reason why housing costs keeps going up. From our position, looking at the density, this is comparable to a single-family development as far as the density. It's just this is an attached product. It fits a different niche in the market. So, from our standpoint, if you look at the grand goals of Legacy, if you look at this in the context of, this being adjacent to the activity center, it being able to be sewered, 0 to 8 units per acre is the same whether it's single family or whether it's attached. From a density standpoint, we felt like it meets the larger goals of Legacy, and it's consistent from a density standpoint. Because sewer's available here, it's one of those things where we felt like this was a reasonable request given the proximity.
That's helpful. Are there any other questions?
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Thank you.
It's in here.
I have a question for Mr. Murphy, then I have a question for our county attorney. Chris, your explanation of the basis for staff's recommendation seems to have an internal inconsistency. On the one hand, your overview basis that we need more housing is a perfectly valid standalone argument. But the suggestion that the density is about the same as what would be allowed if it was rezoned to single-family housing at RS9 appears to be a stretch, because that's not what it's zoned. It's zoned RS20. So it's kind of a bootstrapping argument that in service of the overview goal of encouraging more housing development, more units of housing development, you're sort of glossing over the fact that that what is being requested for this site is a significant density increase, which results, under your own analysis, in a significant increase in trip generation at an already congested area. That doesn't sound consistent, but can you comment, please?
Well, again, keep in mind that this is in growth management area 4, but whenever public sewer is available in growth management area 3, is available, growth management area 4 becomes growth management area 3. Growth management area 3 would recommend a density up to RS9. So whenever you look at RS9, at the 15.5 acres that is on site, that would be 76 single-family homes would be appropriate here. When you look at the 76 single-family homes and the 100 townhomes, you actually, if this were to be rezoned for single-family homes at the density allowed of 76 RS9 zoning, you would actually generate more traffic than the townhomes at 100 units. So again, I'm not sure if that answers the question exactly, but from our standpoint, 100 townhomes, 76 homes, it's a wash. And again, if you're stepping down from, this is going to be adjacent to commercial, I'm not sure if anything else is sewerable back to the east, but again, this would be that step down transition from the commercial to a less intense product than the commercial, but then more intense than the single-family residential on the edges.
Well, I can see how this is consistent with staff's philosophy of what we need. I don't see how it's consistent with what the current area plan recommends. I'm not suggesting that that should be a dispositive argument in this case, but I think we need to be aware of that.
And in full disclosure, this has come up a lot in the last 3 or 4 years, not just in the county, but in the city. And again, we've made that argument in other examples related to kind of the change in circumstances where we are. I mean, again, this area plan was done almost 10 years ago. But again, I'm not arguing with what you're saying, because that's true. But from our standpoint, again, looking at the grand scheme of things, looking at a recommendation of an area plan, and then trying to figure out sometimes how you thread that needle and fit something that's close to a round hole with not truly a square peg, but trying to kind of mesh all the competing interests. We felt like at this point that it was a recommendation that we could support.
So going forward, should we anticipate then that the staff recommendation is going to be based primarily in a situation like this, primarily on the need for more housing, and only secondarily on what the existing area plans actually recommend?
I don't know that will be what we will do in all cases, but again, as we are evaluating zoning cases, and again, we have a guide and we have something that we're looking at, but ultimately we make decisions based on the project and the circumstances.
Thank you. If I may, a question for our attorney. Are there circumstances under which this body would be legally authorized to require contribution to an off-site mitigation measure in a rezoning that legally only changes the zoning for this piece of property?
It really depends on each project. There was, for example, in the recent case, the name's escaping me now, but the one next to Tanglewood, they did an improvement in the state right-of-way a little bit down the road from that. So it is possible, but in this case, it's a little different, because what you're talking about is a property that is a separate property. It's not part of this property. It's privately owned, and you're talking about redirecting a road that only serves about 15 properties. So it just didn't seem reasonable to make that requirement here.
Okay. What about if the mitigation dealt with an off-site signalization?
Again, if you're looking at the big scheme of things, what you've seen is a great deal of development right there in Walkertown, a great deal of commercial development. And so if you're talking about a road that already has 15,000 cars on it, and this is adding, I don't know exactly what the number was, 500, it's probably not reasonable, but that's something DOT would have to be brought in on if that were something you wanted to pursue.
So specifically in this case, if the board wished to, and I'm not saying that it does, but if the board wished to require a contribution to signalization of that next intersection up where there's,
So at this point, you can't do really anything. You're voting either for or against. So the board doesn't have the authority to impose a condition on this rezoning right now. That could have been done before it got to you, and there were discussions, and there was the issue of the turn lanes and the 15%, and so those conditions have been agreed upon by the developer, but at this point in a rezoning, the board does not have the authority to impose additional conditions.
So it's a yes or no vote here based on the proposal before us.
That's correct.
Just Just double checking my understanding of what's available to us. Thank you.
Any additional questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the zoning map amendment F-1624 and statement of consistency with comprehensive plan. I move that the zoning map amendment F-1624, including site plan and special use district, be approved on the basis of the following. The proposed special use zoning map amendment as petitioned by E.M. Light heirs to rezone a 15.5 acre piece of property from RS20 to RM8S. Residential building, single family, residential building duplex, residential building twin home, residential building townhome, residential building multifamily, and planned residential development is consistent with the recommendations of the Legacy Comprehensive Plan and reasonable or in the public interest because, number one, the subject property, a most undeveloped site located on the east side of Ohala Road across from Old 66 Circle, adjacent to the town limits of Walkertown, is currently zoned RS20 and is adjacent to property zoned RS20 HBS and in close proximity to Walkertown property zone GBS and RM18S, with nearby uses including single-family and multifamily residential, agriculture, and business use, and vacant property. Number two, the proposed RM8S zoning is intended to accommodate duplexes, twin homes, townhomes, multifamily, and other low-density multifamily uses at a maximum overall density of 8 units per acre in growth management areas 2 and 3, in metro activity centers and where public facilities include public water and sewer are available. Number three, the proposed site plan features the construction of 100 townhomes. 4, Ohala Road is currently at capacity and the petitioner will be required to construct turn lanes to alleviate excess traffic generated by this site. The site has access to public water, and the proposed privately owned sewer lines and lift station will convey sewage to the public sewer system. Number 6, the subject property is located in Growth Management Area 4, adjacent to a metro activity center, but because the property has access to public water and sewer, it is treated as Growth Management Area 3. Number 7, the site plan is consistent with the Walkertown Area Plan updates recommendation of a variety of housing, although the area plan update recommends single-family homes for this site. The site plan is consistent with the Legacy's recommendation of traditional uses between activity centers and surrounding suburban areas. Number 8, Forsyth County strongly encourages the petitioner to confer with Winston-Salem Forsyth County Utilities regarding the site's sewer and water infrastructure and to connect this infrastructure in such a manner that would allow the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Utility Commission to accept ownership of the infrastructure once completed.
Second the motion.
Got a second from Commissioner Plyler. Any further discussion? Yes?
By word of explanation, I'm troubled by some of the aspects of this case because I think it is a dangerous place to add another large ingress and egress for the people who are coming out. I visited the site on a Saturday afternoon late, and there's not any point nearby where I'm comfortable trying to turn out left into traffic. So I think it is a danger point. If the town of Walkertown had control of that intersection, I would be more at home to saying, go back and figure out a way to make a contribution to that signalization. Since they don't, and since the NCDOT seems unlikely in the foreseeable future to support signalization because it would back up traffic further along there, I don't see a practical way of enforcing that. So my hands are really tied with some of the suggestions that I would normally find appropriate to make in this case. I do agree that we need more housing units. I think that's a commendable overall goal. So this is not as clear a vote for me as it might be in other circumstances. But anyway.
Any other comments? Any other discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-2. All righty. The second item on the agenda is a public hearing and consideration of a special use permit request by David and Betty Lawson for a land clearing and inert debris LCID landfill and a borrow site area for property located on the east side of Piney Grove Road and across from Lawson Areas Drive, zoning docket F1624.
1627.
1627, I found a correction here. 24 is what we just finished with.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, members of the Commission. I believe I need to state my name, Christopher Murphy. I am the Planning and Development Services Director. This is a quasi-judicial public hearing, so all testimony has to be sworn. I will present the staff report. Again, this is a request of David and Betty Lawson for a 73.45 acre site located on the east side of Piney Grove Road across from Lawson Acres Drive. The request is for an elected body special use permit for a land clearing and inert debris landfill greater than 2 acres in size and 2 borrow sites. And this is, again, within Growth Management Area 5. Looking at the Legacy Growth Management Area map, you see the dot there along the east side of Piney Grove Road. This is the subject property highlighted in yellow. You notice there on the east side of Piney Grove Road, just north of an existing LIS owned by the petitioner. That's a land clearing and inert debris landfill that they're in the process of closing. And again, this is adjacent to a tributary to Blues Lake there on the east side. This is a subject property outlined in yellow. You see a majority of the site is wooded. It has a lot of topography. There is a pond on the site, and part of this property has been cleared there along that southern line adjacent to the existing LCID. This is looking east across Piney Grove Road towards the entrance. This is looking west from the entrance across Piney Grove Road. This is looking north along Piney Grove Road. The entrance is further to the north. On the right-hand side of this image, again, you see the sign there in the background of this image. This is looking south along Piney Grove Road. The site is to the left. Again, you see the sign there along Piney Grove Road. This is a site plan for F1627. It does show the haul roads that will be used to access the various cells for the LCID. Again, there also are some borrow sites that will be used in various phases. There is a substantial amount of land that will remain undisturbed. There is a 100-foot floodplain along the eastern edge of the property that will not be disturbed. There are a number of erosion control devices that have to be installed. There are some other areas, again, proposed not to be disturbed at all. There is a stockpile area that's shown along the gravel access road. As far as the analysis, whenever the board considers this following the public hearing, there are a number of findings that have to be met, that the use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the application and plan as submitted and approved. Staff's contention that that is a true statement. That the use meets all required conditions and specifications. Yes, the subject request will meet the minimum requirements of the UDO. Finding 3, that the use will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property, or that the use is a public necessity. Planning staff does not have the expertise to make property value determinations, so we make no assertion as to that finding. And then finally, finding 4, that the location and character of the use, if developed according to the application and plan as submitted and approved, will be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located and in general conformity with Legacy 2030. Again, yes, this is a use that's allowed within the zoning district, subject to the issuance of a special use permit. So that would be our finding, that one could be found in the affirmative. As far as the action needed, an LCID is a permitted use in the RS40 zoning district with the issuance of a special use permit from the elected body following a site plan review by the planning board. This planning board did go to this site plan did go to the planning board back in February of 2023, February 9th, where the planning board did determine that the site plan does meet all UDO requirements. And then the final step is what we're doing here today, which is to hold a public hearing and make a determination regarding the 4 findings, and then based on those findings, either issue or deny the special use permit request. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions. And again, I will remain sworn in so I can answer questions if they come up after you hear from other individuals.
Okay, any questions for Chris?
All right, thank you.
As mentioned earlier, since this item requests an issuance of a special use permit, a quasi-judicial hearing is required. Therefore, all speakers for this item must speak under oath. The board shall not be limited to consideration of such evidence as would be admissible in a court of law. The discussion and deliberation among the board shall occur in open session, and the board may question any witness. All evidence must be presented prior to the board rendering a decision. Now, with that said, anyone who intends to present an argument in favor of this matter, please come forward to be sworn in. That's all of you. If there's 3, 2, 1, anybody that wishes to make a comment, please come up so you can be sworn in at once, and then we will go in order. Our clerk will do the swearing in.
My name is
Just
Caroline.
one second, I'll introduce that. So this is a public hearing, and the first speaker will be the applicant or their representative. So,
I'm not an applicant or representative.
do we have an applicant or representative here? You also need to be sworn in too. Sir, it'd be great if you need to be the first speaker, just briefly outline your request. Obviously, you're in favor.
Yes, sir.
So please, yeah, just comment on that, and if there are any questions, we can ask them.
Could you please make sure you state your name and
Yes.
address before you begin?
I'm Bobby Lawson, David Lawson's son and Betty Lawson's son. And I'm starting a takeover, so we definitely need a new site plan so I can help them out.
Any questions for Mr. Lawson?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, thank you.
My name is Caroline Domenic, and I live in the Pine Knolls development that's almost across the street from this site. My husband and I raised a family in the Pine Knolls development. We have lived there for 32 years thus far. So we go up and down Piney Grove Road quite a bit. It took me a long time to even realize there was anything back there because they maintain such a good, from the road you can't see anything, and they have actually cute little sheds and Moravian store at Christmas, and it looks like a farm. That is also the cleanest part of Piney Grove. If you're driving up and down, you'll see litter, but this section, they actually keep it clean. They are just good neighbors. And I did want to share with you one little thing that happened. My husband and I are friends and help out a blind couple in Kernersville. And they had a big tree come down in one of the ice storms several years ago, and it left a big hole in the yard, which was a danger to the couple and to their guide dogs. So my husband went up to the Lawsons and asked if they would be able to help us fill a hole. Mr. Lawson came out, he filled the hole, he leveled the yard. When we asked how much it was going to cost, he said, nothing. This is what neighbors do for each other. These people are good people. They keep the property up. We've had no issues with any sort of traffic or trash or anything else. And I just wanted to come and speak on their behalf because, once again, I think neighbors should look out for neighbors. Questions?
Any questions?
Thank you.
Right, thank you. I'm assuming that there are no other speakers in favor, so are there any opponents or speakers who would wish to, let me back up. Is there any person that would like to cross-examine our two speakers so far? That is an opportunity that you have. You do not have to be sworn in to ask a question of the presenters, but is there a question for Mr. Lawson, for example, by anyone that might be opposed to this request? And similarly, if anybody would like to dispute the good neighbor, the kind of stuff, you certainly may do so too. I failed to mention that part at the beginning. So would you like to ask a question of one of the, okay, all right. So are there any speakers who would like to, basically anyone who would like to present an argument in opposition? You can all come forward, all that would speak, and we'll do the same swearing in that we did before. And if you can go first, you can tell us your name and address.
Hi.
And when you're finished, I'll try to remember to see if there's anyone that'd like to ask you a question. So
Gotcha.
Please go ahead.
Jennifer Luce, 2757 Stable Hill Trail. Everyone's right. Lawsons are awesome people. We love them. But we live on the backside. of the property, and the outline is 162 feet from our property. And we are very fearful and very confident that it will lower our property value. And with that, we do hear noise, very much at a distance, but we're also now afraid that that noise will then become closer and at our back door, which would then hinder the property value. So that's really our concern. You know, they've always been phenomenal people. It's just now it's really close to our property, and that's our concern.
Questions? Is it Mrs. Lutz? Did I get that
Luce.
correct? Luce?
Luce.
L-U-C-E, Luce. Any questions for Mrs. Luce? I have perhaps one.
Yes.
Have you had any conversation with Mr. Lawson about your concern, particularly, I mean, the property value part, I mean, he can't evaluate, but in terms of the noise and your concern about proximity?
No, because quite honestly, we didn't know this was happening. We got a mail on Saturday. Apparently, there was signage, and it was properly signed in front of their property.
Mm-hmm.
We don't travel that road. So up until Saturday, we were completely unaware that this was even happening. So, no, to answer your question, we were unable to speak with him, nor did we reach out because we were like, well, we better go to the hearing.
Good. Mr. Lawson, anything you'd like to say to that? I mean, you've already been sworn in, and I think it's appropriate if you'd like to, you could.
All I can say is it's a lot further away than she believes. Because it's rolling hills over there, and
Do you know exactly where her house is located?
well, there's a few houses down through there, but I mean, it's a good.
Our name is on it. You'll see if you go in.
It's right. You
I
can
mean,
see
like
my,
I said, she is in the creek flood zone, so she's 100 feet. You know,
it's where my arrow's sitting. That shows up on.
So I guess our concern is that right now, past the creek, there's a big hill, and that's awesome. We're afraid that the debris is going to come down that hill. No?
like I said, that's 100 foot away from. I mean, that's our buffer zone. It's never
You're
going to
never
be
gonna go
messed
past
with.
that hill?
It's never going to be. No, exactly.
Told you he's a good guy.
Yeah, like I said, there's another hill in front of that one.
You're not going to go past those two hills?
There it is. I mean,
Well, see, when you see the outline,
no, if you're at that hill, you're not even 25 foot, 20 feet. So, I mean, we're 100 feet.
so how far will your equipment be where it's not like a train track?
I mean, I don't know how to tell you, but you are a long ways away. I mean,
Well, we're right here. Where's his arrow? We're
see, I mean,
right
You
there.
still got over 100 feet.
It's 162 feet from our property to your.
That's a long ways
And,
away.
and could I just interject with a question make sure that I understand your discussions? Are the topographical lines that are going from those are going up? I mean, are they going up or down? They're going up at that point, and then it goes over the hill. Excuse me. So the debris would have to climb up over the. It's a basin that you're looking to partly to put things in, and what you're looking at is the side of the basin, if I understand it,
Correct.
going up.
Yes, and we're in a valley, so our huge concern was that pushing up to that, and then the debris coming down towards the creek, and we see it, and then all of a sudden, we can't sell our house.
And if I understand what Mr. Lawson's saying is that you would never see the debris on the west side, if you will, of that hill. You would never see it.
And again, the equipment noise. I mean, we hear you guys, it's so faint. It's so faint now.
And see, you're still going to have the woods, and as soon as it turns green, I mean, that's going to even help more. I mean, it's so empty right now, and the wind's been so rough this year. That's another way it pushed over there, all the sound.
But the noise will be louder for us because your equipment's getting closer to it.
Well, I mean, we've
I know you got the hills there, but the hills are there now, and it's not buffering all the noise out. The noise still travels.
It's going to be 8 to 5. I mean, just like any other thing.
So good. And are you Mr. Luce by any chance?
I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry, the gentleman behind you, perhaps he could introduce himself.
My name's Matt Hensey. I'm at 2785 Stable Hill Trail, and I'm just up the street from,
Okay, and could we see are you going up or down on this
I'm
drawing?
going up. So my property doesn't actually bump up against the zone. I'm within the 500-foot parameter that said I should get a letter. And as she said, we didn't see the letter till Saturday, so.
And so it looks like the hill is the same way. Basically, Mr. Enzi, he's looking at the hill going up also on that side.
And like I said, none of the woods are gonna be messed with, nothing over there in that 100-foot buffer is gonna be touched.
And could you comment about, Mr. Lawson, could you comment about the type of equipment you use and?
It's the dozer and Traco.
Okay. You don't have any other big earth movers other than you do have a bulldozer, which is moving earth. And
Well, they push the debris.
Yes,
in the hole,
exactly.
Push dirt on top of it.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Bessie, Commissioner Bessie.
Just wondering, is the maintenance of the wooded nature of the buffer a condition of the special use permit?
Say that again, sir.
Is there anywhere in the conditions for the special use permit that I'm not seeing that requires that the buffer be maintained in wooded?
Well, it's a natural buffer, so they was happy with it.
Commissioner Bessie, similar to special use district zoning, a special use permit has a site-specific development plan that comes with it, and the site-specific development plan notes the areas of disturbance, and it does show the wooded area on the north and the south side of the proposed LCID, along with the 100-foot floodplain area as being an area to be undisturbed. So if they were to disturb that, they would be in violation of their plan, and then they would have to remedy that. Now, there's not, when you take down trees, there aren't good remedies to solve that problem. So again, that we would have to work to solve it. But again, given their track record on what they've done on their existing LIS site, they've done a great job of adhering to their approved plan. So I have no reason to think they wouldn't do the same here.
Thank you. That responds to my question. Thank you.
Chris, state the number of feet that you're talking about, the buffer back.
Well, again, there is no specified distance. It is basically they are showing areas to remain undisturbed. They are showing an undisturbed, unexcavated 50-foot buffer along the floodplain, but then there are pockets of trees all throughout the project that are much larger than that won't be disturbed. So they have a 50-foot undisturbed along the stream, and that's an erosion control requirement. But then they do have other areas shown on their plan, wooded, undisturbed. And again, the purple squiggly line that goes throughout the entire project shows the area of disturbance.
It actually stops. It looks like it stops.
Buffer, is that what we're talking about?
Well
All the way
before
across
the,
stream. Anywhere the creek is, it'll be a
looks like after the
100-foot buffer
first pond.
that will never be touched.
Mr. Chairman, yes, whenever it's appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion.
All righty. But let's,
So from basically this line over, this is undisturbed.
Everything in here is where we're gonna be working.
We need to make sure each witness is speaking.
yeah, we need to kind of hear who's speaking, and then, and why don't you just do one at a time and close out that last discussion?
Put the map back on.
There
There
we
we
go.
go.
There we go.
Okay, right here is 2-acre sites are what we're getting, but we're asking for 10 acres. So we won't have to come up here every,
Right.
and, but you gotta think 2-acre site takes a while to fill in. So we're gonna be way over here. I'm pretty sure this is site 1 where we're starting.
Mm-hmm.
So we won't get back there I hope I live that long, but ain't no telling.
Where's the area that where your site is now? That's closing, that's down here?
It's somewhere over here.
Okay.
It's right here.
It's off the, it's
right
off the
in here.
map in this
Yeah.
area.
Okay.
So at no point, whether you make it to this end or not, at no point will we even be remotely aware of what's happening with y'all? You won't go, I hope not either.
Well, see, and so there's, my concern is when we were talking about the noise. So now, see, you're working down here where your equipment is, and we can hear your stuff. And it's, I'm not saying it's
It's distant.
like, yeah,
Well,
it's
see,
distant, but you're going to be a
I'm
lot
over there
closer.
every Saturday, right now, every Saturday and Sunday. So have y'all heard me now?
Are you
I'm
on
working
Saturday
the
and
road.
Sunday?
Yeah, over there, because I'm working over here during the week, so I'm trying to get this road and stuff, trying to get a road going now. Because I got to have
Okay.
access anyway, so if y'all can't hear me last
We
Saturday.
hear
and
you all the
Sunday-
time. I mean, but I don't write down what
Oh, yeah,
days I'm
well, I mean-
listening to you.
See, that's a little bit, so, I mean,
So, in a nutshell, don't want to wreck at all what they want to do. I just don't want my property value to diminish, and I certainly don't want to hear tractors in my back door.
Got it. And I assume, Mr. Handley, is
like I
it?
said, that's, you got to think that's.
No,
that's over
Lawson's
15
over here.
acres or whatever.
Center.
Gotcha.
It's going to be a long time if you ever do.
Anything else needs to be said?
I'm good.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to continue this matter for 2 weeks or 30 days, depending on our schedule, to give these Mr. Lawson and his neighbors a chance to have some discussion, and if Chris May can aid them any way as far as information, do that. As Chris pointed out earlier, that they had, I suppose, had no complaints. I've never heard any complaints about it. I don't pass there very often, but haven't heard any complaints about it in the last, any time. So, but to, I think it's a possibility to Mr. Lawson and the neighbors might get something worked out. Just make that motion so they'll have some time to talk and see what they can do, because I think there's only, Chris, I believe you said, is it 40 acres that could be disturbed, 20 acres to use for borrow, and 20 acres to use for field? Did I understand you correctly at some point say that?
Sorry, that's my understanding. Again, I don't have the specific numbers, but of the 70-some acres, it seems like it was 40 acres or under total, and about evenly split between the LCID and the borrow.
Okay, was it just to make a point, that's all it could be? And I can't imagine them working on all of it at one time, so it's not the whole 70 acres. But that's my motion, Mr. Chairman.
I will second Commissioner Linville's motion.
It was second by Commissioner Plyler. Is there some discussion about this?
Yes, sir, if I may. Go ahead.
Just a time, 2 weeks or?
Well, we're off because we have the 6th. We're because of the 5th Thursday of this past month, so we're actually, the meeting is probably 3 weeks away.
Well, 30 days be better, schedule-wise.
What's that guy want?
Well, 3 weeks would be the time.
We really, if anyone's.
If you're going to speak as a part before we close the hearing, why don't you come up and get sworn in?
Chairman, after his discussion, after his remarks, may we continue the discussion, please?
I assume you'd like my name and
Yes, name and address
who I
would
am,
be
just
helpful.
like everybody else. My name is Chris Hay. I work for EnviroTrack Limited. It's a environmental and engineering consulting firm. We've assisted in putting this plan together and getting it through the process with the city and basically to where we are today. Now, the LCID that is shown on the drawing is in 5 stages, and that it's outlined by that big, broad, brownish yellow strip, which is actually the road. Okay, so inside the road, actually inside the inside of the road, in the narrower orange line is the actual fill area. Okay, and those 5 phases are all approximately 2 acres. Some are slightly more and some are slightly less. So the total fill acre is less than 10 acres. Okay, it's not 40 acres, it's less than 10. As Mr. Lawson indicated, the reason it's in 5 phases is because they may never get to phase 5. The landfills that they had on their existing property, the first one was 2 acres, and that was that was done before I worked with them, and I've started working with them in 2000, approximately. Another gentleman leased the property and ran that, and then Mr. Lawson started doing the same operation on the one that he's trying to close out right now, which is 5.5 acres. And that has run since that time until very recently, where it finally got its cover on it and is being in the process of being closed. So I guess part of what I'm saying is the fill acre is 10 acres. It's very likely they'll never get to phase 5. Another point I'd like to make is that if you see the blue rectangles within the fill area, those are erosion control devices that are required so that if any debris or sediment material they put on top gets free in rainstorms, it gets caught in those erosion control devices. Okay, so any fill in that last 5th phase, which is closest to the stream, will have to be to the west of that blue triangle. Now, the edge of the fill area extends past that, but it's not practical. It was an oversight on my part. The line there really should be inside of the erosion control device, which means that the actual distance to the stream from any fill or cover to the fill is the distance of that erosion control device and the floodplain, which on here it's way too small to see those dimensions, but I believe that erosion control device to be 142 feet in length. And then the floodplain, and then there's a buffer, there's a 50-foot buffer, and then there's the floodplain to the stream, and I don't know how wide the floodplain is right there. We do have a dimension from the corner of the landfill to the stream bank is 162 feet, which is what Mrs. Luce mentioned, I believe. I guess my point is it's going to be at least 100, 150, maybe more feet to the west, any fill that's going to go in that area. The fill cannot go into the erosion control device or beyond it. So those were just some clarifications I wanted to make. So people seem to be having some confusion over.
That's helpful. We have a motion on the floor and a second to actually continue
Mr.
this.
Chairman, if you could ask if anyone has any questions of this witness.
Any questions for, tell me your name again. I missed it. Chris. Any questions for Chris? It was helpful, by the way, and I think I understood those 5 yellow circles down in the basin. Those are the 2-acre spots, correct?
The 5 circles?
Aren't they 5 little yellow? I mean, not the big circles.
Orange dots that is dropped. Yeah.
Can you go over and use your cursor and just point out a couple of things?
So we're talking about this, this.
That's what I called yellow.
Yeah, it's actually words.
Yeah, I guess in that, I'd like to make another point is that, okay, so within this area, now that I know where the cursor is, this is the fill area. All right. And this is the stream over here. This is Mrs. Luce's property. This area here is all wooded and is to be undisturbed, as well as this area here. Okay.
Will you be at the site when the work begins to act as an advisor if there's a question or problem or need in the interest of getting the project completed properly and on time?
I'm at the site periodically. I help to keep them with a firm understanding of what the requirements are and what they can and can't do, keep them in compliance and without violation. And to date, we have not had any issues with that.
Where her property is.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I miss? Okay, so can I borrow this for a second? So on here, this is her property. Am I right now?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
So it's almost adjacent.
I'm sorry, I was
to-
looking at it and I thought there
to
was
this.
one down here.
Tell me about that again?
This blue rectangle,
Yeah.
this is an erosion control device that's meant to catch any sediment that comes from the operation. So
That's where
basically
the
it's,
fill cannot go.
right, so any fill would be west of that point. No fill can go beyond this. And we have submitted an erosion control plan, and it went through review, and we are revising it to their recommendations at this point. That particular area that's in question has been revised quite a bit so that the landfill fill area now comes from a point about here down to a point about here. So this area that was shown as fill previously in here is gone. And that's, like I said, it was an error on my part in that we had to move this erosion control device to the west because the very corner of it was in the floodplain. Originally, we didn't know that because we used the county's floodplain line, and when we went to submit to erosion control, they said, well, actually, that floodplain line's not right, and they gave us a different floodplain line. So then we had to move the erosion control to the west, which made us move the fill area to the west also. So on most recent revision of this, the fill area is backed up to the west of that blue rectangle.
You're bringing some interesting items for us to think about, but after talking about the negatives so far that you've talked about, do you have an estimated time from start to finish, how long it's going to take this project to be completed?
Do you mean completed to the point of starting operation or completed to?
Starting operation and completing it and then walk away.
No clue. It depends on who and how much fill people bring and to fill up the volume of space they have.
Okay.
No, there is the requirement, which I'm sure you guys have heard or has been gone in previous discussions. There's a reclamation plan that's required. Erosion control requires that if any area is inactive for a certain amount of time, it's covered and seeded so that there's no serious threat of anything getting away from the property, even though the erosion control is there and can't leave until it's done. But no, I really don't know. I mean,
So this is not a quick fix operation. It could be as far out as Christmas.
if
As
Bobby
far out
has
as 100 years.
If Bobby has kids, his kids might be doing something. I don't know. Or maybe a humongous development will come in somewhere and fill it up in a few years. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we are at beyond our hearing point, so I'm going to declare the hearing closed, and thank you for being here. Now, we have a motion on the floor and a second for continuance and discussion. Ms. Wizenhut mentioned, Commissioner Wizenhut mentioned she'd like to speak.
Yes, I'm about to do something I've never done since I've been serving with Commissioner Linville. I'm going to vote in opposition to his motion, mainly because I don't know what postponing this would settle. And I've heard both of the folks who spoke say they're okay. I'm not sure that anything would change in a month or so, so I'm sorry, but I will vote in opposition to the motion.
Is there any other discussion?
Yes, sir. Here.
Yes.
Thank you so very much, Chairman. I, with you, Commissioner Wizenhut, believe that these folks have mediated on their own based upon their testimony here today. And with all due respect to you, Commissioner Linville, I would like to proceed with the agenda item today. So thank you.
All right. Any other discussion?
One question. Thank you. Is there a notification mandate of when the neighbors should have received the information about this hearing?
There is a requirement of notification. I'm not sure exactly when those were sent out.
If you'll give me just a moment, I can tell you when those letters were sent out.
Okay. I noted that one of the neighbors said that she just received it on Saturday. I'm not sure what the timeline is of notification, 3 days, 5 days.
The statutory requirement is, I'm sorry.
Oh,
The statutory requirement, I can tell you, is no sooner than 25, to put them in the mail, no sooner than 25 days before the hearing and no later than 10 days before the hearing. So I would imagine they probably went in the mail early last week, would be my guess.
That's correct. I just want to confirm the date for you.
And they did in fact receive notice.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, for the commissioners, I'd almost withdraw my motion, but I'm not going to.
All right, is there any other discussion?
But the point is this. I think it's, we'll see how it turns out, Commissioner Wizenhut. I think it's a possibility these folks can have a conversation and the ones that has a question see better about what it is that they're planning on doing. I don't question petitioners, the work that they've done on it. As Chris, the planning director, has said, they've not had any problems. And to try to answer Mr. Plyler's question a little bit, these things are they're fairly long term. What they've been doing, they've been there quite a while. I don't know how many years they've been there, and this would be for some period of time. But my only thought is to hope these people can come to agreement. If it is, my motion is approved. Whenever we come back, we'll make the decision either way.
All righty, we're ready to vote. All in favor of Commissioner Linville's motion, which is to postpone for 3 weeks, please raise your hand. All who, I have 3. All who are opposed to postponement, please raise your hand. Did you vote, Commissioner Bessie?
I voted yes for the.
Well, let's try that again. All those in favor of postponing the motion, please raise your hand. That's 4. We will postpone for 3 weeks. Thank you.
Way to go, Richard.
Ms. Wizenhut requested a 5-minute. We will take a 5-minute recess. Thank you. We are back in session, and we are ready for the next item on the agenda, which is a public hearing on an ordinance amendment proposed by Planning and Development Services staff to amend chapters 5 and 11 of the UDO to add use-specific standards for pesticide, fertilizer, and other agricultural chemical manufacturing, explosives, and pyrotechnics manufacturing. UDO CC 17. Mr. Murphy, give us a quick review.
Good afternoon again. I believe y'all might not allow me to come back since I've taken up 2 hours and we still have 3 more public hearings to go. So with that, I will move ahead. This is a text amendment prepared in response to the Winston Weaver fire aimed at achieving greater land use protections for potentially harmful industrial uses. The proposed regulations follow extensive research and discussions with both the Public Works Committee of the City Council, which served as the Winston Weaver Task Force, and with the Planning Board. Just a little bit of background, the Winston Weaver plant fire in early 2022 led staff to assess the city and county's current land use regulations for such facilities. Staff researched how North Carolina peer communities address fertilizer plants through zoning restrictions and other requirements. The peer communities included Cumberland, Durham, Guilford, Mecklenburg, and Wake counties, and then the principal cities within each of those as listed there. Fertilizer plants are only allowed in a community's heaviest industrial zoning district was the general theme that we saw. They were also classified as some form of chemical or high-impact hazardous manufacturing. We did find a number of additional use restrictions of note, special use permit approval in some, enhanced setback from residential districts, perimeter and security walling and fencing, hazardous materials management plan, and then consistently water supply watershed restrictions. I believe that's in conformance with state statute. Again, we've previously held a public hearing on this, so it's been briefed several times. The requested modifications came in 2 forms. After the initial public hearing, there were some concerns voiced by commissioners related to the inclusion of battery manufacturing in the Planning Board recommended version. So staff went back and modified UDO CC 17, the first revision, to remove battery manufacturing from the request. Whenever we brought this item back before the commissioners, through the second briefing process, there were some concerns raised by a couple of commissioners relating to the minimum acreage at 25 acres being too large, and asked us to investigate what would work, and we did look at that and proposed 15 acres, and with that reduction in the acreage, we have also looked at reducing that enhanced setback from 400 feet to 200 feet, again, to provide an area within that acreage to conduct the operations. This did result in 50 additional properties being eligible for this within the county zoning jurisdiction. And again, similar to the previous change that we had made, battery manufacturing is not part of this request. This is just showing, and again, I'm not sure if those are, that is the additional, it's hard to see, but there were additional parcels that did come into this whenever we looked at going from 25 down to 15 acres. Again, it brought in approximately 50 additional parcels, so there are over 120 parcels either currently zoned or recommended in various plans for industrial zoning where this use could go. A public hearing was held by the Planning Board in October. There were no speakers in opposition, and the Planning Board did vote 6-2 to recommend approval of the Planning Board's version. And again, that was kind of probably the sweet spot because one person thought it was too restrictive and one didn't think it was restrictive enough. The original version was adopted by City Council back in December. Again, the county commissioners had a public hearing on March 16th, and there were no speakers in support or opposition. Following that public hearing, the commissioners did request a 2-week continuance for staff to investigate reducing the minimum site size requirement. So that is what is before you today. And again, you have, I believe, from my understanding of kind of how this has evolved, you have 2 versions in front of you. You have a version that takes battery manufacturing out and has a 25-acre, 400-foot setback, and you have a version in front of you, again, that also has battery manufacturing out. that has a 15-acre minimum site and size and a 200-foot buffer. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Chris? Righty. Is there anyone that would like to, this is a public hearing, is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the request? I apologize. Seeing none, is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this petition from the planning staff? I'll declare that the public hearing be closed. We have two options available for vote today, option 1 and option 2. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve either option 1 or option 2?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the alternate option of the minimum 15-acre plan of the fertilizer plant manufacturing.
Option 2, I have a motion by Commissioner Linville, I have a second by Commissioner Bessie. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All righty.
Thank you, Chris, for addressing our problems.
Yes, thank you. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing on an ordinance amendment proposed by Planning and Development Services staff to amend Chapter 9 of the Unified Development Ordinances to alleviate off-street parking requirements for restaurants and growth management areas 1 and 2. This is UDO CC 19. Chris, you can review this one again.
Good afternoon again. Yes, this is UDO CC 19, which is to amend Chapter 9 of the nonconformity provisions to revise the off-street parking requirements for restaurant uses in older buildings in GMAs 1 and 2. Just a little bit of background. In 2006, both the city and the county adopted UDO 160, which provided greater flexibility for changes in use in older non-residential buildings. These provisions allow changes of use to occur in buildings constructed prior to 1968 in the county and 1988 in the city without requirements for additional off-street parking. Only restaurant uses were still required to comply with the UDO parking requirements or seek an elected body special use permit. These uses were excluded from the parking provisions for older buildings due to concerns regarding insufficient off-street parking that could create overflow of vehicles into adjoining neighborhood streets. Many businesses in GMA 1 and 2 are located within older structures that are non-conforming to off-street parking requirements. Since 2006, 7 special use permits, all have been within the city, have been requested for restaurant parking exemptions, and all have been approved. 4 of those 7 have been approved since 2020. All 7 of the special use permit requests, again, were approved by City Council. There haven't been any that have come to the commissioners. The proposed text amendment revises the UDO to remove the requirement for an elected body special use permit for a reduction in required off-street parking for restaurant uses in older commercial buildings. Any existing parking on site must be retained. The proposed language will simplify the approval process for applicants to establish restaurant uses in GMAs 1 and 2, which could promote more adaptive reuse of existing buildings. Staff does not anticipate any significant negative effects on surrounding residential neighborhoods as a result of the proposed change. This was heard by the Planning Board at their November 10th, 2022 public hearing. There were no speakers in opposition, and the Planning Board did vote 8-1 to recommend approval of the request. And this was adopted by City Council in February of 2023. This is just an image that shows where those special use permits within the city have been issued. And this is just a GMA, this is just the growth management area map for context to show where GMAs 1 and 2 are. Of course, the largest GMA 1 area that we have is in downtown Winston-Salem, which is handled by the city of Winston-Salem. GMA 2 is that salmon color, which is the urban neighborhoods growth management area, also within the city. The only area that this would apply to would be in there's a small town center area of Tobaccoville and Rural Hall where this would apply. We did reach out and speak to Dan Corder, who had no concerns related to this request. Our attempts to get in touch with someone in Rural Hall have not been successful. We've left several phone calls as well as sent some emails. Again, I know, understandably, they're going through a bit of a transition, so we did not hear from them, but just kind of looking at it anecdotally, this would only apply to probably a street or two within Rural Hall, and again, it appeared within the areas where that would apply, there would probably be ample on-street parking and some ancillary off-street parking in the area. Again, Rural Hall hasn't exactly been a hotbed for restaurant in adaptive reuse type situations, but again, this would afford them that opportunity and would keep the ordinance consistent. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Chris? This is a public hearing. Speakers will have up to 15 minutes total to speak in favor of this request, up to 15 minutes total to speak in opposition. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the petition? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of UDO CC 19.
Motion approved by Commissioner Bessie. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner McDaniel. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing on an ordinance amendment proposed by Planning and Development Services staff to amend Chapter 3 of the Unified Development Ordinances to add that the first bottom layer of asphalt be installed and approved in subdivision streets prior to acceptance of surety for remaining infrastructure improvements and final plat recordation. This is UDO CC 20. Mr. Burvey.
I think we're finally to the end of my show here today. I'm not going to reread what you just read, Mr. Chairman. Just a little bit of a background. This amendment was requested by our interdepartmental review staff to clarify the street construction requirements, which must be met prior to us signing a final plat. And again, once we sign the plat, that allows lots to be conveyed to builders and property owners. It codifies existing policy to reduce potential developer confusion. This requirement has been our policy for several years and is well understood by local developers. This actually was modified in our subdivision regulations back in the mid-2000s. What we thought it said isn't exactly what it says. So there's been some confusion among developers based in other markets whenever they come into our market thinking that final subdivision plats could be recorded with only a stone base installed over their water, sewer, and storm lines within the streets. This amendment was presented to the Quarterly Development Forum, which is an avenue where we get city and county staff together with developers, construction folks, engineers, architects to talk about development issues. We shared this with them back in September. There were no issues or concerns expressed with the general idea of doing this. Further, once the language was finalized, we emailed a copy of that to that same group, asking if they had any concerns, and if so, to let us know. And again, we received no comments. We haven't had anyone that has shown up at the planning board public hearing. No one showed up at the city council public hearing. The recommendation, again, this was heard by the planning board back in December. No one in opposition. The planning board did vote unanimously to recommend approval of this request to both the city council and the county commissioners, and the city council did adopt this back in February of 2023. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Questions for Chris? This is a public hearing. Speakers will have up to 15 minutes total to speak in favor of this request and up to 15 minutes total to speak in opposition. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the petition? I'll declare the public hearing closed. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of UDO CC 20.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Bessie. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner McDaniel. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Madam Clerk, do we have any calls? And I imagine somebody might have given up the ghost by this point. But do we have any calls or cards for the public session?
No, Mr. Chairman, but do you mind going back to number 7 about approval of minutes?
Oh, sorry, I missed that. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes, item 7.
So moved.
Approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Platter, second by Vice Chair Wizenhunt. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now, Mr. Manager, we're ready to continue the remainder of the agenda at 4:18.
All right, very good. We do have some business items for consideration this afternoon. We have reviewed these and hopefully have answered all your questions, so I'll go ahead and dive into them. Agenda item 9 is an amendment to the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget ordinance. It appropriates behavioral health reserve fund balance for transportation and for security services in the behavioral health urgent care. This will appropriate $62,500 to increase security, and it is adjusting that Daymark Center contract.
Any questions?
Move approval.
Motion approved by Vice Chair Wizenhut. Is there a
Second.
Second by Commissioner Plyler. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
All right, agenda item 10 is an important item, and I've got to be very careful about how we do this. If I could get Lee Plunkett to come up just for some adult supervision to make sure I'm doing this right, that'll be great. And then Gordon also is going to weigh in on it. And I'll take it by parts of item 10. Item 10 is a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of Forsyth County, North Carolina, making certain statements of fact concerning the proposed bond issues. Lee, do you want to just mention briefly those statements of fact?
Yes, so the statements just essentially say that there's sound financial policies in place, both for debt, budgetary, and fiscal reasons. It also states that our county manager and CFO can hire the required professionals to complete the transactions, and names Parker Poe and First Tryon as our bond counsel and financial advisor, and also provides the confirmation needed to apply for approval with the LGC.
All right, and so we just need a motion. We need an action on that first item A.
Move approval.
Motion approved by Commissioner Plyler. There's
Second.
Second by Commissioner Vice Chair Wizenhut. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
All right, and according to the instructions, I am to read aloud B, C, D, and E, basically the bond orders, to sort of read them into the minutes. And so item B is a bond order authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $22,920,000 in general obligation bonds for the County of Forsyth, North Carolina. Item C is a bond order authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $2,300,000 in general obligation community college bonds of the County of Forsyth, North Carolina. Item D is the bond order authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $2 million in general obligation bonds and recreation bonds of the County of Forsyth, North Carolina. And item E is bond order authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $2 million of general obligation public facilities bonds of the County of Forsyth, North Carolina. Did I do that right? I got the thumbs up. And so I've essentially read those into the minutes. We do have at your place the project list, and I've got the project list for the Forsyth Tech matters, the general services, regular county matters, and the parks. When we go into the briefing session, I'll talk a little bit more about those because we are essentially getting ready to take action on the public hearing. And so you don't have to do anything with those items other than just hear the fact that I read them, but you do have to take action on item F, which is a resolution of the County of Forsyth, North Carolina, calling a public hearing on bond orders, directing publication of notices of said public hearing, and filing of a debt statement and statement of disclosure. Anything unique that's not self-explanatory there? Okay, so that is
I'll
it.
move approval of item F.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Plyler. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Wizenhut. Any discussion?
One inquiry. Mr. Watts, when you read out item B, you meant to say $22,923,000 of general obligation school bonds, didn't you?
I might have missed the word school, and if I did, thank you so much for that clarification. So I will reread item B then, which is a bond order authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $22,920,000 general obligation school bonds of the County of Forsyth, North Carolina. Thank you, Commissioner Bessie.
Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
All right, great, thank you very much. We have a couple of ARPA items, or several ARPA items. Item 11 is a resolution approving execution of an agreement with Work Family Resource Center Incorporated to support new licensed family child care homes with American Rescue Plan Act funds. You've got an associated amendment to the ordinances. This will appropriate agree to appropriate $221,185 for recruitment and start of 20 new licensed family child care homes.
Move approval of item 11.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Plyler. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Wizenhut. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Item 12 is a resolution approving execution of an agreement with CARE, doing business as Delicious by Shireen, to provide workforce development training to refugee women with American Rescue Plan Act funds. You've got the associated ordinance amendment regarding the funding, and this will appropriate $25,000 to train and empower 4 to 8 women in an entrepreneurial enterprise.
Move approval of item 12.
Second.
Motion approved by Commissioner Plyler, second by Commissioner McDaniel. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
All right, and item 13 is a resolution approving execution of an agreement with Hands On Northwest North Carolina for nonprofit training and support with American Rescue Plan Act funds. This will provide $63,810 to assist with capacity development for small, underrepresented nonprofits. And if you remember, when we were going through that, there were a lot of nonprofits who had applied that really didn't have capacity. And really, this was sort of your plan to try to help build capacity in the community around those.
Move approval of item 13.
Second.
Motion approved by Commissioner Plyler, second by Commissioner McDaniel. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
We got some contracts. Item 14 is a resolution authorizing execution of a contract between Forsyth County and McNaughton, a division of Brodart Company, to provide the public library with leased books not to exceed $236,577.24.
Move approval of item 14.
Second.
Motion approved by Commissioner Plyler, second by Commissioner McDaniel. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Item 15 is a resolution authorizing execution of an amendment to an agreement between Forsyth County and Vanguard Professional Staffing Incorporated for temporary child welfare staff with the Department of Social Services, provide an extra $26,000 for this purpose.
Move approval of item 15.
Motion approved by Chairman Plyler, second by Commissioner McDaniel. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Item 16 is a resolution authorizing execution of a change order to Contract Business Solutions Incorporated for furniture for the new courthouse project in an amount of $16,969.46 for the Estates Division of the Clerk of Court.
Move approval of item 16.
Motion approved by Commissioner Plyler, second by Commissioner McDaniel. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
All right, you've got a property matter, you got a resolution consenting to the execution of a sublease agreement between Partners Health Management and Daymart Recovery Services for county-owned property at 650 Highland Avenue to support the construction project.
Move approval.
Motion approved by Chairman Plyler,
Second.
second by Commissioner McDaniel. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
You got a bunch of appointments, and I'll look over that way.
Okay, thank you. Although it appears that we have a bunch of appointments, sadly, we did not have that many folks to apply, but we're going to work on that in the future. But we appreciate the folks who do serve on these committees and boards, and we hope in the future to have more. Our first is the Adult Care Home Community Advisory Committee. There could have been 16 appointments. The capacities are open and administrator slot. We have 2 folks wishing to serve. One incumbent for the open slot is Joan Kerr Graham. The citizen wishing to serve is Raina Hill. And I make a motion that we approve these 2 citizens and then continue the remaining appointments.
Second the motion.
Motion by Commissioner Wizenhut, second by Commissioner Plyler. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
We have Animal Services Advisory Board. One appointment is for acting chairman/president of the Forsyth County Veterinarian Association. We did not have any applications. I move that we continue to a future meeting.
Second the motion.
Do we need a motion to continue? To advertise?
I think we'll
I don't think that's required.
I mean, typically you don't, but
Okay, cool. Okay, Community Appearance Commission, Winston-Salem, Forsyth County. We had 2 appointments and no applications. Okay, Community Child Protection Team Child Fatality. Fatality Prevention Team, 2 appointments, no applications. Equalization and Review Board, we had 5 appointments, and we have 4 incumbents wishing to serve. We have Daniel Crudup, Richard Davis, Paul Stewart McGill, and Keith Veneer. I move that we approve these applications and then
Second the motion.
continue.
Motion approved by Commissioner Plyler. I'll second it. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Forsyth County Agriculture and Review Board, 2 appointments. We have citizens wishing to serve. One is Jameson Apple. He's an actively engaged in farming. And we have Lay John, who is a non-farmer. I move that we accept these 2 citizens.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Plyler. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Forsyth County Home and Community Care Block Grant and Advisory Committee, we had 8 appointments. We have several citizens wishing to serve. We have Andrew Applegate, Linda Darling, Gwendolyn Hill, Francine Wahlberg, and a citizen wishing to serve is Jovan Mosley. I move that we accept these by acclamation.
Second.
Second by Commissioner, motion by Commissioner Wizenhut, second by Commissioner Plyler. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Industrial Facilities and Pollution Control Finance and Authority, we had 5 appointments. We have 1 citizen wishing to serve, Drew Seville. Move that we approve this citizen by acclamation.
Second the motion.
Motion approved by Commissioner Wizenhut, second by Commissioner Plyler. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Nursing Home Community Advisory Committee for Forsyth County, we had 9 appointments. I'm sorry to say we had no applicants. Planning Board, City County, 1 appointment. We have an incumbent wishing to serve, Clarence Lamb Jr., and we have a citizen wishing to serve, Drew Seville. You may vote for 1.
Second the motion on Mr. Lamb.
We're voting by ballot. Please complete your ballot. Our
here.
county manager will collect them.
I had that all this meeting and forgot about it.
Check your vote and give it to the put your initials, just need to check.
We don't have a background on this guy.
Yeah, it was in the agenda section.
Collect the rest.
You see that.
Give you a little heads up on I'm not going to hold the process up.
There you go. Yep. Keep that back. There you go.
Mr. Chairman, Clarence Lamb received unanimous vote.
Righty.
Zoning Board of Adjustment for Forsyth County, we did not have an applicant. And that completes the appointments, Mr. Chair.
Righty.
All right, agenda item 29 is ordinances. We've got an ordinance revising Chapter 6 of Forsyth County Code entitled Animals. There were a few changes. If I could just get Damon to tell you what those were between when you saw it last and today.
So when you look at Section 655F, it had added to it per day beyond 15 days, and we removed that back to the original language so that it basically would be reflecting that every 15 days, there would be an additional penalty, as opposed to each day beyond 15 days. We just put it back to the original language. And then in 663B, it names the sheriff or their designee and the public health director or their designee as the person responsible for declaring dangerous dog declarations. And that's because it said previously the health department and the sheriff's office, but the state law indicates that individuals have to be referenced. So we went back and changed it to the sheriff or their designee and the public health director or their designee. And everything else should be essentially the same.
Yeah, maybe make mention, we actually got contingent approval on the shelter to pick up operations starting effectively tomorrow, but it will be closed for a bit. Maybe mention that.
So as the manager mentioned, the county received conditional approval for the shelter and licensing so that we can resume operation on April 1st. At that point, people will be able to redeem their animals. Animals will be coming in and out through law enforcement function. There'll be some people able to turn over animals that perhaps were found stray roam, but won't be fully operational like you normally would see till the 11th. But we will be open. We'll resume operations on the 1st. We'll have a soft opening on the 4th, and then we'll be fully open on the 11th as staff have a chance to train in the facility and clean and do the animal handling and all that as we transition away from the Humane Society to our own staff.
Move approval.
Good deal.
Got a motion by Commissioner Plyler. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Wizenhunt. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
All right, you can take items 30 and 31 together. You got resolutions approving refunds by the tax collector assessor, the amount of $585.63 and $11,407.84 respectively.
Move approval of items 30 and 31.
Motion approved by Chairman Plyler, second by Commissioner Linville. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And in reports, item 32, the Liquidity Services Operation LLC sold asset report.
Move approval of item 32.
Approved by Commissioner Plyler.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Linville. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
That is it for the formal meeting. Mr. Chairman.
It was three. There were three in opposition, but I mean, there were three. It was two. It was Tom. I'm sorry. Apologize for the delay. We are ready to adjourn this meeting and begin the briefing session. I'll make a motion. We adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All right.
Discussion item, which is just regarding demolition at the airport. The public hearing item that we go into a little bit more depth, if I could get Lee to come on up and just explain a little bit about what we just did in that formal meeting, and then what will happen at this meeting on the 20th of April related to the bond sale.
Sure. Thank you. So the public hearings are for the actual bond orders, which were introduced when Dudley read them into the record in the meeting just prior. Excuse me. And so our clerk will publish those notices of the public hearing, which will happen on April 20th, and we'll give a chance for the public to comment on those bond orders. And the bond orders themselves, authorize the actual issuance of those bonds and states the amount and the purpose, describes the security that's going to be tied to those bonds, which is obviously your taxing authority, and then when it will take effect after its publication. And that it will be published in all four of our local newspapers. And so that's the gist of those bond orders and a requirement by state statute.
All right, very good. And so, as I mentioned in the earlier session, you actually have the proposed uses for the 2/3 bonds that are everything except the schools. We reached out to the schools, asked them for their list They, according to Superintendent McManus, she really wants to get their board to be comfortable with what that list looks like. Obviously, it's a lot of new members on that school board, so it's some education that she's having to do and just getting everybody up to speed. And so we've given her a deadline around when we get a narrowed list. She kind of gave us everything that was kind of out there, which was $400 some odd million. Obviously, we're not selling that much debt for the schools at this point, and so Superintendent McManus has indicated she will be here on the 20th. She'll be able to kind of go through what those projects are. Hopefully, we can get those by the time we're back in 2 weeks from now, and we can look at them at least, prior to that. But anyway, they're working on that. And other than that, that's kind of where we are. I would ask you to take a look at our projects if you've got any concerns about them. I know Commissioner Bessie had asked me about the one of the improvements in the park side, particularly related to putting in a disc golf course at Tanglewood, trying to make sure we don't disturb too much of the kind of natural state of Tanglewood, and we will make sure and do that. But if you've got other projects that you'd really like to get a little more detail on, let us know. So, anything I missed?
Yeah, once the public hearing of the bond orders happens, then there'll be the approval and the actual meeting itself, along with the resolution that authorizes the sale and gives the LGC all the information they need to conduct the competitive sale for us.
Yeah, and one thing that is a little curious, if you look at it, of the amounts that we've talked about, we've not talked about the 100, the big bond sale that's going to be part of this is the last tranche of the $350 million that was authorized back in November of 2016. And so that, since all that work has already been done, that really, explain when that will show up for their consideration.
So the bond orders were already approved back when the referendum was voted upon, but the resolution itself that you'll see for the April 20th meeting recognizes that $105 million amount as the not to exceed par amount for the referendum voted bonds, and so that will be the only action that will be needed to sell those bonds.
All right. Any questions for Lee? Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask for some guidance. We've been here a long time. I can go into any level of detail on the items that were on the list, or I cannot. It is completely up to you. They are fairly routine in my early pass at it and the conversations we had at the staff level. Obviously, we're going to get this agenda finalized by, I guess, a week from Tuesday, and then you'll see the detail there. But we're in the process of that.
I'd say if there's anything non-routine, why don't you just...
Well, that's where you always get yourself in trouble.
You use the word routine to start with.
I know. You'll see on that agenda where there's a $600,000 budgetary item where it's interlocal agreements with Rural Hall, Tobaccoville, and Walkertown, and that is that from that appropriation that Senator Cravett made, and then she directed us to be sort of her staff in helping get that money out to those towns, and so you have that there. Couple of ARPA items that are pretty straightforward. We're finalizing those. There is a grant. There's a lot of money in the environmental world right now, and so Environmental Assistance and Protection is actually working on some grant money there. And then the purchasing items are really pretty straightforward. So I think it's, knock on wood, I think it's pretty straightforward.
All right.
All right. So, the last item we have is Mark Davidson, real quickly, and I'll give you the background on that. He's going to show a quick PowerPoint gist of some buildings we're getting ready to take down. And I will admit, I have done this for a long time, and I thought that there was a requirement that county commission boards declare real property surplus or a building surplus before you tear it down, because I've got to get your permission to declare that chair surplus. But for some reason, we can actually take a building down and there's not really that requirement. I can't sell the building without your approval, but we can take it down. So actually, at the staff level, we're working on sort of a policy where we would not remove a fixed asset like that without your permission. I just don't want you to drive by the airport one day and see a building that you thought was yours and it's not there anymore. And so I think this is pretty routine. We'll go, Mark's already done great work at getting bids to take them down. He's got a good low bid. They're ready to roll, and this will be further improvement to the airport grounds and further improvement.
So you're just telling us in a nice way, don't come in with a list of buildings we want torn down, right?
Well, what I'm really saying to you is I'm not going to tear a building down without telling you the building's getting torn down. So I'll turn it over to Mark real quick.
So Dudley stole my thunder.
I'm
Tearing
sorry.
down some buildings. Real quick, this is a slide. It was taken, I think, July 1st, 1960, but you can see that little red arrow at the end of a runway. There used to be 4 runways. We have 2 runways now. I'm thinking the building was built in 1940s, actually to accommodate B-25s during flight training during World War II. But right now, it's currently used, well, it was a couple months ago for piston aircraft, smaller aircraft. Signature Flight Support leases it from us. And then the plan was we brought a consolidated and reinstated lease to you, and the idea was we were going to renovate this hangar. We were going to bring it back to life, and those plans changed. We had an engineer structural report done, and I got a call from James Anderson, our construction manager, and he said that building's unsafe. The trusses on the western side of the hangar are failing, and we notified everybody to get out, all the aircraft to get out. We notified the fire department. And for years, the North Carolina Department of Transportation Museum had always wanted that hangar for a DC-3 down there in Salisbury. And so I gave them a call, and they took a look at it, and they don't want it either. So it's time to tear this thing down. It served its purpose. It served its life. And so we got a new hangar. I actually mentioned bringing down this hangar in a previous request to you when we went for the state legislators. So we were asking for additional funding for a new hangar on the same spot. And since we're going to be tearing down this hangar, we went ahead and got quotes for a building, a house that was just donated to us back in December. It's right across from the fuel pumps there at the fleet, and then also a walkway that goes from the old Piedmont Advantage Credit Union to that hangar at 3820 North Liberty Street. So, like Dudley said, we bid it out. They got a real low bid of $39,382, and they're ready to roll. Any questions?
One quick question. For the no longer historic hangar, do you think the Transportation Museum would be interested in having a photographic sort of inside look for its archives? Sometimes they have photographic displays of items that it just wasn't practical to preserve.
Oh, you mean just come over and take pictures before we tear it down?
Yeah.
Oh, there's been a lot of pictures over the years. I can ask them, Rick Reed and people down there. Sure.
Hey, just a suggestion. It's not not critical.
It's pretty run down. We call it the bird hangar because all the birds hang out in it. So it's not a pretty sight.
No action needed. Obviously, we're in a briefing session, but we will go ahead and move forward with the contract, and in the future, make sure we take, just for procedural purposes, make sure to take them to you. We do have to adjust the fixed asset ledger to reflect that it's not in the asset list anymore. So, thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. And that's all, Mr. Chairman.
All right. With a gentle reminder that tomorrow is April Fool's Day, I move we adjourn.
Done.
Second.